You already know what it is. It's your boy Laid Back with another reaction, another review, another episode. Hey, Diddy, you up to bat? Pause. Bah. It's your boy Laid Back. Welcome back to my channel. Hey, two things we gotta do. You gotta hit that subscribe button. I'm drinking this water. You already know what it is, man. You are the prize in 2025. You are the prize in 2025. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Stay up to date with all the videos. We back. We got more shit going on, man. I told you I'm gonna try to stay up to date with this as best as possible. We got another Diddy update. You know what I mean? Woman freaks out in P. Diddy trial, curses, and gets tossed out the courtroom. We gonna see what they talking about. You make it to the end of this video, you a real one for real. Make sure you put that in the comments, man. But let's go ahead and get into it. Fire Squad, what's popping? Let's get it.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So we have with us Law and Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner, who has been inside that courtroom for every day of testimony and things that are not even testimony related, including an outburst today, and apparently someone getting banned from court. Elizabeth, it's good to see you. Let's start with what happened here. So you're in court. What did somebody say? And also, I understand somebody else is now banned from being in that courtroom. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, so Jesse, this happened first thing this morning. It was outside of the presence of the jury. We were actually talking, or not we, as far as the press is going, but the arguments were about Mia's testimony and possibly introducing some jail calls. So I was listening, taking notes, and then all of a sudden I'm hearing screaming going on. And it's from a woman who we've been kind of noticing has been causing a couple of troubles here and there, just as far as court goes. She was removed from the overflow room during jury selection, and she was removed from the main courtroom today during these arguments. And so I'm writing down my notes, I'm jotting everything down, but even just the backstory of this particular woman, we in the press have been referring to her as the MTA lady. It's not necessarily confirmed whether or not she actually works for MTA, but she always kind of comes in with an MTA jacket, and that's how we kind of have remembered her. So I'm just going to give you guys the low that we had kind of had bets with amongst us in the press just about how long it would take before something like this were to happen again, because we were thinking that she...
So they already knew she was about to turn up eventually. They knew eventually because she was having some issues that she was probably going to end up turning up. And today was the day.
Would cause trouble just right off the bat, and then lo and behold, it didn't take very long for her to kind of stir up some trouble and for the marshals to escort her out. So from what I heard, it was just cussing, it was yelling, mainly from her, and then I saw just 4 marshals just try to grab her. She was saying things along the lines of, oh, use your gun against me, that type of thing, and she was threatened, I believe, with the taser, but that didn't happen. We didn't see any of that. And so from our understanding is after this incident, after kind of the marshals escorted her outside of the courtroom, as far as what was going on inside for the judge, he went back to business as usual. But from my understanding, she was just kind of dismissed from the courthouse altogether, and likely won't be able to come back in, and likely won't be able to come back in the courtroom too. But even as far as just the incident of somebody revealing Mia's true identity and I guess saying this over a live stream or in a video, that type of thing, that was also brought up shortly after the incident of the woman having the outburst inside the courtroom today. And so what we did learn about that, it was somebody who was actually sitting on our side of the press, not with a NYC verified press credential, nothing like that. But what it's been kind of alleged is that it was somebody sitting on our side who kind of works for a blog or a media outlet, that type of thing, and that after court yesterday was doing this video, doing this live stream, and was essentially talking about Mia and wasn't referring to Mia as her pseudonym, was instead referring to Mia as her true identity. And so what AUSA Emily Johnson discussed with the judge today is that she didn't see this individual inside the courtroom today, so there was no further, I guess, talk about what was to happen next. But if this person were to show up once again, then they'll definitely not be allowed back into the courtroom, and I doubt even into the overflow room at this point either.
Well, Elizabeth, that is quite a way to start the day. And let me tell you something. We just got a super chat comment from Donnie ZTV. Great reporting, Elizabeth Milner. So there you go. So you got a bunch of fans online. But talking about that, talk to me real quick, because I know you have to head back into court in a little bit. Eddie Garcia. takes the stand. Now, you and I talked about him yesterday because yesterday he was intending to invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. You know, ears perk up. What's he going to say? What did he do wrong? And he was granted immunity to testify. So this former security guard from the Intercontinental Hotel, what were the highlights of his testimony?
Wow.
Well, I thought Eddie Garcia had a lot of highlighted moments during his testimony. So yes, we did see him invoke his Fifth Amendment right as far as self-incrimination goes. Yesterday. And then we saw him actually take the stand today. And so he was questioned by AUSA Mitzi Steiner. And so the basis or the kind of the meat of his testimony had to kind of be surrounded by what had happened on March 5th of 2016. Anyone who has been following this case knows that that was the exact day of the Intercontinental Hotel incident. And so what we learned from Eddie Garcia is that he is now 33 years old. However, at the time that this incident occurred, he was just 24 years old. He was working for Securitas, who we kind of know a little bit about from Officer Israel Flores' testimony, who was one of the first witnesses called by the government to testify essentially against Sean Combs, aka Diddy. So we were learning just about who the director of security was, and that was a man named Bill Medrano. The assistant director of security was Officer Israel Flores. And so Eddie Garcia was talking about how he's still friends with Israel Flores, saw him a couple weeks ago, but they didn't talk about the substance of their testimony. But Garcia said he saw a TikTok about his testimony, so I thought that part was interesting. So we see an exhibit photo of the employee sign-in sheet, where you see on the day of this incident that we see Eddie had worked from 2 p.m. till 1:30 in the morning. And so we saw some extra overtime because he normally gets off at 10 p.m. But instead on that day, he got off at 1:30 in the morning. And so he was saying after this incident occurred that we know from Officer Israel Flores' testimony that Diddy was kind of trying to buy his way out of this, trying to say like, hey, I got some money, can you make this go away? But then from Eddie Garcia's perspective, he said he got a phone call from somebody, and it wasn't necessarily Diddy at first, but we heard from him today that Christina Courtroom had called him, and he said he was even kind of nervous and a little apprehensive about how Christina Courtroom got not only his work number, but his personal cell phone number too. And so then there was kind of a sidebar, and the sidebar was pretty lengthy because right before the sidebar had happened, Christina Courtroom said something along the lines to Eddie Garcia that Diddy was intoxicated that night and didn't remember what was going on. But they were pretty much trying to obtain the one and only version of that security tape. They wanted to buy it off of the hotel, and initially they were going to purchase it for about $50,000. However, Diddy gave them double that of money. He gave them $100,000. And that money was divvied up pretty much. It was divvied up $50,000 to the director, or it was divvied up $50,000 to Bill, who was the director of security. Henry Elias, who also works at the hotel, was given $20,000. Eddie Garcia kept $30,000 to himself and actually used the money to buy a used car. Then we kind of slowly got into what Eddie had to do in return for this money, and that was to sign an NDA. We saw kind of a copy of this NDA inside the courtroom, where it was pretty much saying that you're not to discuss this. You're signing away that you are giving away the one and only copy. And as far as Eddie Garcia is concerned, he said the next time he saw that this video, because he thought that he had turned over the one and only copy through a thumb drive to Diddy, he thought that was done. He thought that this incident was over. He was going about his business until he saw the video once again playing on CNN. And it's a video that a lot of us have seen at this.
Hold on. So he thought he sold it, the original copy. Diddy thought he had it. Next thing you know, you look up and boom.
And possibly even some jurors too.
Yeah, I find that fascinating because legitimately, you know, this goes, as we've been talking about, to the bribery allegation, one of the underlying crimes of racketeering. And clearly the issue of him, you know, not being essentially bought off and not being cooperative with law enforcement and not reporting it, you could see why he needs some sort of protection. Real quick, I know you have to jump back, but in 1 minute, 2 minutes, what was the cross-examination about?
Yeah, the cross-examination went pretty quick. So we saw an exhibit photo of the NDA again, but exclusions from the NDA, where it said a disclosure of confidential information in response to valid order by a court or other government body, or B, as otherwise required by law, will not be breach of this agreement or a waiver of confidentiality for other purposes. Then we saw the non-disparagement portion of that NDA, and that was a non-disparagement against Combs or Combs parties. And then the final question from Brian Steele, who did the cross-examination, was whether or not Eddie Garcia went to law enforcement with this information. And then, spoiler alert for the redirects, he was kind of asked that same question. And he said he did report it to law enforcement. It just wasn't police. It wasn't LAPD. Instead, it was federal agents when he had first talked about this incident and everything that came afterwards, too.
All right. Very interesting stuff. Elizabeth Milner, as always, great reporting. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I know you got to get a good seat. Who knows what's going to happen next in that courtroom. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thanks,
all right.
Jesse.
So let me get now to this. We have a question from Legs7K for all three of my guests. Afi, I'll start with you. But it says, hey, Jesse, how does Rich, Afi, and Candace see the next 3 weeks going with this trial? Or what would they like to see come into play next? Afi, I start with you. I don't know if we can hear you, Afi. I don't know if you're muted or we got to work. Afi. Okay, I'll tell you what. As we work on Afi, let me go to Candace. Candace, I'll start with you.
So what I want to see is receipts. I want to see digital trails, which is what we are getting to, right? With the money, who oversaw the transactions, so that we could see the connection of all of this happening. Because a lot of this happened with cash transactions. So I want to see that. I also need to look at this whole RICO conspiracy. Who are the other people?
Right.
I want to hear from security guards. I have to hear from those people who are protecting Combs, because Combs wasn't driving himself around. Combs wasn't, going out and getting candles. He was getting other people to get this. All of those people who we haven't heard from, who were protecting him, those are the people who are going to be key. And I think that we will definitely hear from them, and I think that we need to.
Rich?
Yeah, I sort of agree with that. I think we need to see the bona fides of the RICO claim here. I think we need...
And that's the thing that people have been talking about. They keep talking about the Cassie situation, the domestic abuse, stuff like that. That's not what he being charged for. He's being charged for the RICO and stuff. So even they like, okay, we got 3 weeks left in this trial. We need to start hearing more about this RICO stuff. We need to start having these receipts. We need to start having people that was actually involved with what's going on. That's the RICO. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they need that information.
And I think that we need to.
Rich?
Yeah, I sort of agree with that. I think we need to see the bona fides of the RICO claim here. I think we need to see what exactly the enterprise it is. There are conspiracy allegations here. We need to see somewhat of an agreement to commit criminal predicate acts and a pattern of racketeering activity. That's what RICO is. It's not abuse. It's not domestic violence.
Just said that.
It is a pattern of racketeering activity, and I do think we need to, I totally agree with Candace, I think we need to follow the money, we need to connect it to the accounts, and we need to put the whole enterprise together so that we can make this RICO claim stick.
So I'm going to get Afi's answer to this later on. I know we're working on some technical issues with her. But Candace, I'll throw another question to you. I was just talking about Eddie Garcia's testimony. This is a question from RSS. Are there any penalties for Eddie initially lying to the police about the Intercontinental Hotel video?
Well, not now. And now that he has immunity, that's off the table. I mean, if he lies on the stand or was lying today, that's one thing, because if you perjure yourself, that's not protected. But he came in yesterday. He signed what he needed to do in order to be protected for today. And because it was a subpoena, he said he didn't want to be here, obviously, but he came full throttle, but he's safe so far.
Candace, let me throw another question to you. This is from Rel. Can you bribe someone who's not a law enforcement officer?
Well, sure. Sure, you can bribe someone that's not a law. You can really bribe anyone.
Right.
Especially if it's if the goal is to suppress evidence, if the goal is to obstruct justice, if the goal is to hide something illegal that you are trying to do, and that's what the financial transaction was for, that in the name of the law would be illegal, certainly that bribery would stick like anybody else.
So again, we're taking your questions in right now. We're also waiting for court to start. We will give you real-time updates and a real-time breakdown for the next hour or so because we don't need to miss any moment of this trial. Rich, I'll go to you. We got a question from Fragility G4. If Diddy is acquitted, does double jeopardy apply only to federal charges, or can a state press similar charges?
So a state could press theoretically different charges. You don't usually see a state prosecuting RICO charges anyway, since that's a federal statute. But remember, there are issues because a lot of the things we're talking about are a long time ago and out of the statute of limitations. So I don't really know. I'd have to sort all through it to see if a state could still make some hay here if he's acquitted.
And the argument against the prosecution is because there are statute of limitations issues, they have taken these allegations, and again, this is the argument for the defense or people in Sean Combs' camp, they've manufactured it, they've transformed it into a complicated federal case. There are those, even though we're talking about it, who say, I still don't see racketeering, I still don't see trafficking, it feels like a reach, I don't think they've reached those elements, but this is why you can bring similar conduct that may have had an overlap with state charges, right? I mean, the 2016 attack, theoretically, he could have been charged at the state level for that, but it was too old. Obviously, now we know there's issues of where the video was. But at the same time, it could be an element. It could be evidence of racketeering or evidence of trafficking. So you see that overlap there. Okay. Candace, we've got a question from Christina Lester. Why is arson such a specific predicate of RICO? If he'd just taken a baseball bat or golf club to Kid Cudi's car, would it not qualify for RICO?
Well, listen, there are 35 predicate crimes that you need for RICO. It has to be on that list. This is what the law was determined to be in 1970, albeit for mafia. But it happens to be on that list, and that's why arson is specific. It is a very serious crime, right? It's not a misdemeanor on any level. So because it's so serious and because it was involved with so many people in terms of when you look at it at a mafia level, it made the list. It just has to be one of these things on the list. And that's why it's important. It has to be on that list.
I've got a question here, Rich, from Lisa. This is a great question. KK, so Christina Courtroom. This is Sean Combs' former chief of staff, right? The head of the personal assistants, I would say. This is somebody who I actually dedicated another sidebar to yesterday about her role and how much she's been mentioned. KK has now been implicated at the hotel trying to get the tape and calling the security guard. Is she part of RICO and will have to get immunity? So will she testify?
I don't know if she'll testify. That's an interesting question. I don't know if they've offered her immunity to testify. Or theoretically, if she hasn't been offered immunity, she might plead the fifth instead of testifying because she would be implicating herself. So I don't actually know what's going to happen, but she's very clearly part of what the prosecutors are painting to be a criminal enterprise. She's the chief of staff. She is, in theory, carrying out his bidding. She's the person who goes out to find this videotape so that he can retrieve it because they know there is very bad evidence out there.
All right, that was another update on the Diddy situation. Somebody went in there and freaked out today. They had to get her out of there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you gotta go. You can't be wilding like that. But y'all gotta really pay attention to what's going on right now. Even they said it in that video was, he's not on trial for domestic violence. He's not on trial for that type of stuff. He's on trial for RICO and trafficking. And they said it's only 3 weeks left in this trial and they haven't built up a good case against the RICO and the trafficking yet. Now, we've been covering this for a few weeks now, you know what I'm saying? And the fact that they haven't even started building up a hefty case regarding the charges that's coming towards him, even they like, you know, we waiting on this part so we can really push forward and see what's going on. We need to see receipts. We need to see who was handling this, who was, but if they not doing that and we just going off of the domestic violence and the stuff that we pretty much know already, Diddy might walk. Let's keep it 100. If they don't prove it, Diddy can walk. It sounds crazy, but Diddy could walk, bro. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna pay close attention to what's going on. I'm gonna try to do my best, but you know it's a lot going on, man. But you make it this far, you a real one for real. Make sure you put that in the comments. You let me know what you think about this. But till next time, man, self-love and positivity, Fire Squad. I got you and you know it.